My name is Harper Lane, and if you saw me today, you'd probably think I had it all figured out. I was sitting in my glass-walled corner office, the kind where sunlight spills across polished floors, the kind I once only saw in magazines. My silk blouse whispered against my skin as I leaned back in my chair, staring at the skyline. From here, the city looked endless, alive, like it belonged to me. My assistant had just placed a fresh cappuccino on my desk, the steam curling like a delicate ribbon in the air. But then my phone buzzed. One text. From my mother. Your brother is struggling. You should call him. He always tried so hard to be as good as you. I laughed under my breath, though it wasn't really funny. It was bitter, sharp, like glass in my throat. For years, it was the other way around. For years, they sneered at me, compared me, crushed me with words they thought I'd forget. You'll never be as good as your brother. That sentence was burned into me, carved into the girl I used to be. And now here they were, wanting me to reach out, wanting me to remember him kindly, as if I could forget how they built him up by tearing me down. My fingers hovered over the phone, heart pounding. Maybe it was time. Maybe it was finally time to show them who I had become, the woman they never believed I could be. I whispered to myself, almost smiling, then tell him to step into my world and see for himself. I was 16 the night everything shattered. It was supposed to be just another family dinner at our small house in Ohio. The kitchen smelled like roasted chicken, my mom's favorite Sunday meal, and the faint ticking of the old wall clock filled the silence between clattering silverware. My brother, Ethan, sat across from me, grinning the way he always did when he knew he was the star of the show. Straight A's, varsity basketball, a scholarship waiting for him. And me? I had scraped through another math test, proud of my C+, but terrified of what Dad would say. I should have known. Dad's voice cut through the air. Ethan's making us proud. Full ride on the horizon. And you, Harper. He paused, his fork still in his hand, eyes sharp enough to slice through me. You'll never be as good as your brother. The words hit harder than any slap could have. My hands shook under the table, nails digging into my palm. I tried to blink back the tears, but they burned hot and heavy, threatening to spill. Mom didn't even look at me. She just nodded in agreement, passing Ethan another serving like I wasn't even sitting there. Something inside me cracked. I excused myself, ran upstairs, and slammed my bedroom door shut. My chest heaved as I buried my face into the pillow, muffling the sobs. That's when my grandmother, Margaret, knocked softly. She didn't come often. Her health kept her home most days, but that night, she had sensed the storm. She slipped into my room with her quiet grace and pressed a small object into my hand, a silver locket. Inside was a tiny photo of her as a young woman, standing in front of a typewriter, determination written across her face. I built my life when no one believed in me, she whispered, brushing my hair back. Harper, you carry that same fire. Don't let their words decide your worth. Promise me. I clutched the locket like it was oxygen. Her words wrapped around me, a fragile shield against the cruelty downstairs. For the first time, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could choose a different path. That night, I made a vow. I would no longer chase their approval. I would no longer measure myself against Ethan. I would prove them wrong, not by being louder, but by becoming unstoppable. And though I didn't know it then, that was the night Harper Lane was truly born. Leaving home at 18 wasn't a graceful choice. It was survival. I packed 2 suitcases, the locket from Grandma Margaret hanging under my shirt, and boarded a Greyhound bus to Chicago with barely $200 in my pocket. The city was loud, unforgiving, and indifferent to a girl who came from nothing. I rented a tiny apartment the size of a closet. The wallpaper peeled in strips, and the pipes clanged at night like angry drums. But it was mine. My first corner of independence. I worked mornings at a coffee shop, pouring lattes for business people who barely noticed my face. At night, I took classes in marketing and design at a community college. There were days I went to bed with my stomach growling, but I told myself hunger was temporary. The vision in my head was not. One night, exhausted after a double shift, I sat sketching ad mock-ups in the corner of the cafe. A woman in her 40s, sharp suit, kind eyes, noticed my scribbles. She introduced herself as Claire Donovan, a creative director at a mid-sized agency. Instead of laughing at my amateur work, she leaned in and said, "You've got something here. Rough edges, but fire." Claire became my first mentor. She invited me to intern at her firm. At first, I felt like a fraud walking into that sleek office, but Claire never let me shrink. She drilled into me. Talent is worthless without persistence. Keep showing up. And so I did. I stayed late when others left. I devoured books on branding, digital strategy, consumer psychology. I learned how colors and words could move people to tears or to their wallets. My locket never left my neck, and whenever self-doubt crept in, I held it tight, whispering to Grandma's memory that I wouldn't waste her faith. My first big win came with a small bakery client. I designed a campaign that doubled their sales in 3 months. The owner hugged me with tears in her eyes, saying I'd saved her family business. That moment lit me up more than any grade or praise ever had. From there, word spread. More clients, more trust. By 25, I wasn't just freelancing. I had founded my own boutique agency, Lane Creative Studio. I started small, just me, a rented co-working desk, and a laptop that overheated if I pushed it too hard. But within 2 years, I had a team, offices, clients who flew me out to pitch because they believed in my ideas. And through it all, my family barely knew the truth. When they called, I kept details vague. "I'm doing fine. Work's busy. Yeah, I'm managing." I downplayed every milestone. I didn't post photos of business class flights or glowing client reviews. I let them believe I was just scraping by, still struggling to find my way. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about protection. About keeping the fire safe until it was strong enough to burn through the lies they once forced on me. But inside, I knew. One day, the girl they sneered at would stand before them as a woman they could no longer ignore. The day of reckoning didn't arrive with fanfare. It came quietly, like a storm disguised as a drizzle. It was a Friday morning when my mother called. Her voice, tight with worry, carried through the line. "Harper, your brother needs help. He lost his job. He's moving back home. Maybe you could, give him something to get back on his feet." The irony nearly made me choke on my coffee. For years, they'd told me I'd never measure up to Ethan. Now, they wanted me to rescue their golden boy. Instead of answering, I invited them to meet me at my office the following week. I could practically hear Mom's confusion ripple through the phone. She thought she'd find me in some cramped cubicle or shared workspace. She had no idea. When Friday came, I dressed deliberately. A deep emerald dress that hugged my waist, gold earrings that caught the light just enough, and heels that echoed authority with every step. My locket rested at my collarbone, a silent reminder of the promise I'd made years ago. The lobby alone left them speechless. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed everything in golden sunlight. A receptionist with a polished smile greeted them by name and offered lattes as if they were VIP guests. My father's eyes darted around at the marble floors, the modern art on the walls. Ethan shoved his hands into his pockets, his jaw tight. They thought they were here to witness my struggle. Instead, they were walking into the empire I had built brick by brick. When the elevator doors opened onto the top floor, my assistant guided them into a conference room overlooking the skyline. I let them wait. 5 minutes. Then 10. Build the suspense. Let the silence tighten. Finally, I entered. The room stilled. My father blinked like he'd seen a ghost. My mother's lips parted, but no words came out. Ethan's face flushed crimson. "Thank you for coming," I said smoothly, setting down my leather portfolio. "I thought it was time you saw what I've been up to." I watched their gazes dart around the room. The awards lining the shelves, framed campaigns I'd spearheaded, a sleek plaque on the wall that read Lane Creative Studio, CEO, Harper Lane. Mom clutched her purse tighter. This is yours." "Yes," I answered simply. "All of it." Silence spread like wildfire. I let it burn. Ethan scoffed finally, his pride wounded. So, what, you make ads? That doesn't mean. I cut him off, calm but firm. I don't make ads, Ethan. I build brands. I've taken startups and turned them into multi-million-dollar companies. I've sat at tables you can't even imagine. And every single piece of this, I gestured around the room, I earned without anyone's help. Especially yours. Dad's voice, usually booming, was hoarse. We didn't know. I smiled coldly. You didn't want to know. Mom's eyes glistened, shame softening her face. We thought we were pushing you. By tearing me down? My voice cracked, but I steadied it. Every time you said I'd never be as good as Ethan, I believed you. Until I didn't. And now, I leaned forward, locking eyes with my father. Tell him to try and keep up with me. The weight of those words settled heavy in the air. Ethan looked away first, his shoulders slumping. In that moment, I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I wasn't the shadow to Ethan's spotlight. I was the storm, the fire, the one they had underestimated until it was too late. And for the first time in my life, they finally saw me. The silence in that conference room pressed down on all of us. For years, they had spoken over me, dismissed me, compared me until I was raw with shame. Now, their voices faltered and mine carried. My mother was the first to break. Harper, she whispered, her voice trembling, we didn't realize we thought you needed tough love. I folded my hands on the table.
No, Mom.
What you gave me wasn't tough love. It was cruelty dressed up as parenting. And the thing about cruelty is sometimes it makes people crumble, but sometimes it makes them fight. My father shifted uncomfortably. So what now? You're just going to throw this success in our faces? I let out a soft laugh, not unkind, but edged with steel.
No, Dad.
I don't need to throw anything. You're sitting in it. You're drinking lattes paid for by it. You're breathing in the air of a company you said I'd never be capable of creating. Ethan finally spoke, bitterness dripping from his words. So, what, you want us to grovel? Beg for your forgiveness? I met his glare head-on. Not grovel. Change. They blinked, startled, as I laid my conditions bare. First, I began. The comparison stop. Forever. I will not tolerate another word about me being less than Ethan. If you want a relationship with me, it will be built on respect, not measurement. Mom nodded quickly, tears gathering in her eyes. Second, I turned to Ethan. You need to stand on your own 2 feet. No more coasting on the idea that you're automatically better. You're not. If you want help, financial or otherwise, you'll show me a plan, proof of effort, accountability. I'm not here to clean up your messes anymore. Ethan's face twisted, but he didn't argue. Deep down, he knew it was fair. Third, I continued, my voice steady but softer now. You both need to own what you did. Not with excuses, not with half apologies. With honesty. Admit that you hurt me. Admit that your words shaped me in ways I'll be healing from for the rest of my life. My father's jaw tightened, pride battling guilt. For a long moment he said nothing. Then finally, quietly, he muttered, You're right. We failed you. It wasn't enough.
Not yet.
But it was a start. I leaned back, letting the weight of the conditions settle. I don't hate you. I don't want revenge. But I will not step back into the old patterns. If you want me in your lives, this is the price. Honesty, respect, and change. For the first time, the power dynamic shifted entirely. They weren't dictating the terms anymore. I was. Mom reached across the table, her hand trembling as she touched mine. We'll try. I promise you, Harper, we'll try. I looked down at her hand, then at the locket resting against my chest. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. Don't let their words decide your worth. And I realized I had done exactly that. I had decided for myself. The weeks that followed felt strange, almost fragile, like walking on new ice. My parents called more often, not to criticize, but to ask about my day. Sometimes the conversations were awkward, filled with silences where old habits wanted to creep back in. But then Mom would catch herself before making a comparison, or Dad would pause before raising his voice, and I could see them trying. Ethan surprised me the most. For a while, he avoided me, ashamed, maybe resentful. But one afternoon, I got an email. It wasn't long, just a few lines. I've applied to 3 jobs. I don't know if I'll get any of them, but I'm trying. You were right. It wasn't an apology, not exactly. But it was the first time my brother had ever admitted I was right about anything. And for me, that was a start. Alone in my office one evening, I held the silver locket between my fingers. The photo of Grandma Margaret inside had faded slightly, but her expression was still the same, determined, unshaken. I whispered to her memory, "You were right. I carried the fire." For years, I thought proving my family wrong would be the greatest victory. But standing there, looking at the empire I had built, I realized the real victory was proving myself right. That I was never defined by their sneers. That my worth had been mine to decide all along. The city lights glittered outside my window, reflections dancing across the glass like stars within reach. I closed my eyes, breathing in the quiet satisfaction of a woman who had endured, who had risen, who no longer needed permission to shine. And then, almost as if the universe wanted the last word, my phone buzzed again. A message from Dad this time. Just 4 words. "We're proud of you." It wasn't perfect. It didn't erase the years of hurt. But it was something. I smiled, slipped the locket back against my chest, and whispered to myself the line that had carried me through the darkness, now rewritten with strength. They sneered I'd never be as good as my brother. And I stood tall and said, "Then tell him to try and be as good as me."